Good evening, Rabbi. A friend of ours asked a good question regarding a person who's half Jewish. So what does this mean? As you know, right, the Chazal tell us that if one of the parents is Jewish, the other parent is not Jewish. So it depends on what the mother in that case. What does that mean? That if the mother is Jewish, the child is considered to be Jewish. If the father is Jewish and the mother is a Goya, so the child is a Goy. It's not like half and half. There's no 50%. Either you're here or you're there, right? There's nothing in the middle. We know that, we've heard of that already, but the question is like this, right? That if a person is born from such a union like this, that the mother was a Jew, the father was a Goy, so what status does he have? Okay, he's Jewish, but is he a Mamzer? Is he a regular Jew? Is he a perfect Jew? Is he a good Jew? What kind of Jew is he, right? This is the question that they asked me. So the truth is, that there's a machloket in the Gemara about this. In Masachet Kiddushin, in the last parak over there, it talks about this issue. What is the status of this child? So the truth is, there are some say there is an opinion like this in the Gemara. It's a mamzer. There is an opinion like this. So what does that mean? If he's a mamzer, that means that he cannot marry into the Jewish people. So who does a mamzer marry? A mamzer marries either another mamzer, or he marries somebody who's a ger, who's a convert, right? A mamzer is allowed to marry a convert. So you have one choice or the other, right? You can do either way. The problem is like this, that when a person is considered to be a mamzer, the prohibition never leaves him, even after 100 generations. It goes on forever, so you have to trace the lineage of this mamzer to make sure, that everybody knows that, not everybody, but people have to know, that some people in the community have to know that he's a mamzer. That's why, there is actually an opinion like this brought down in the poskim, that when a person is born and he's a mamzer, so they say, the custom is to call him a certain name. So you know what name they give him? it's a funny name. They call him Kidor. So what's the significance of this name? Kidor. It's a pasuk, right? Kidor ha tapuchot hema. It's in the end of the Chumash, right? We're gonna B'ezras Hashem read it before Rosh Hashanah, right over there. That's where we usually read that. So I think it's in Hazino, Pashat Hazino. It's over there. Kidor tapuchot hema. Exactly, yeah, over there. So why do we call him this name, Kidor tapuchot hema? Because the parents of this child, obviously, somebody over there was not behaving properly, and therefore the child was a mamzer. He did a sin, the parent, whatever. And the pasuk is telling you, Kidor tapuchot hema. It's a generation which does everything crooked. Tapuchot means crooked. It's a crooked generation. They're doing sinful things. So that's why they call him this name, Kidor, to remember that he's a mamzer. So this way people shouldn't forget, that he's a mamzer. Why? Because we have to know, when times for him comes to get married, we have to know that he can't marry into the community. He has to marry, as we said, either another mamzer, or he has to marry a ger, a convert, one or the other. Now the thing is like this, that even though he married a ger, nevertheless, since one of the parents, it says in the Gemara like this, in Masachet Kiddushin, in the end, Asar Yochasin, last parak, it says over there that since one of the parents is a mamzer, what happens is that the children are going to be mamzerim. It's always like that, Even though the other parent was kosher, relatively speaking, whatever, he was kosher, it comes out to be mamzerim for all generations, even though it's only one parent. So there's no way to get rid of that. By the way, there's a famous Gemara, there's a Mishnah, by the way, that talks about this, How does a person get rid of mamzerut? There's actually a way that you can do this, Can you imagine? Let's say a person has a child who's a mamzer, and he wants to make him kosher. So what do you do in a case like this? So something pretty funny. Today nobody does this, but this is the way to do it. What happens is that you take from him, shifcha kananit. Today we don't have shifcha kananit. But the truth is, if a person wants to make shifcha kananit, he could. What does that mean? You buy a slave. In other words, you ask some person who's a goy, goya. You ask her, do you agree to we're going to give you some money, we'll give you $10,000, right? Whatever, Do you agree to be a shifcha? We're going to have to use you as a shifcha. So what happens is that this lady will become a shifcha if she agrees to it. But you can't force her. You can't force anybody into slavery today. There's no such a thing like that. Unless you're living in some crazy place, right? You can't force somebody into slavery. So what happens is that you tell her, okay, you're going to be shifcha. So what's going to be is that this Mamzer is going to have relations with this Shifcha and have children, So the rule is that when this happens, what is the child considered to be? The mother is a Shifcha, the mother is a slave, the father is a Mamzer. So what is the child? Is he a Mamzer or is he a Eved? This is the question, right? So the answer is that he's Eved. It always goes like this. So therefore now, this child is an Eved. So he's not Mamzer anymore. He lost the designation of Mamzer. He lost it. This is the way it works. So what happens is like this now. Since he's an Eved, whoever owns him, right? Whoever that may be, right? The father, whatever, the grandfather, whoever did this job that we talked about just now, whoever owns him as an Eved. By the way, what happens is like this: that when the Shifcha, you own the Shifcha because you gave her money, right? To be, you paid her for that service. She became like a surrogate mother, a surrogate Shifcha. That's what it is, right? So what happens is that Shifcha now has a child, so whoever owns the Shifcha also owns this child as well. This child. He's an Eved, technically speaking. So now what we do is that whoever owns him gives him get shichrur. What does that mean? He gives him a document to emancipate him, to make him free, set him free. Once you do that, you give him a get shichrur. You set him free. So now he becomes a Jew. You understand? A full-fledged Jew. And this is how you get rid of the mamzerut. This is the way you do it. This is the way it works. There's no other way to do this. The only problem is like this, that when you do it this way, now the problem is, it's a little bit of a problem. Well, okay, it's not the end of the world, but it's a little bit of a problem. Now, since this boy was an Eved, okay, and he already had children, with a Shifcha, and he's an Eved. His father had children. He's an Eved. So since now he was freed from being an Eved, he doesn't have any more yichus, any connection to his parents anymore. He's not connected anymore. Why? Because Eved has no connection to the father who's a Jew. There's no parental connection there anymore. It's set free. So therefore, the way it works is that now he's a free Jew. He was freed from being an Eved, but his father anymore is not his father. That's it. It's not your father anymore. Too bad. What can we do, right? Your father is a Mamzer, and you're not a Mamzer, so he's not your father. This is the way it is, This is the way it works. Okay, I'm just telling you that right on the side. But that wasn't really the question. The question is like this, right? That a person, as we said, right, who's born from a Jewish mother and a Goyish father, is he a Mamzer? So the answer is no. With the halacha, it's not like that. Even though there's a machloket in the Talmud, halacha says the child is not a Mamzer. So therefore, they're allowed to marry into the Jewish people. There's no limitations except one. Even though there's a machloket about this too, the halacha is that if she's a daughter, if she's a girl, she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. Even though she's a kosher Jew, she was born from a Jewish mother, nevertheless, we don't allow her to marry a Kohen. Lechatchila. This is the thing. What's the reason why? What's the reason why we don't allow her to marry a Kohen? Because she is considered to be puguma. She's damaged. The neshama is damaged there because the father is a goy. This is the way it works. So therefore the rule is lechatchila, she's not supposed to marry a Kohen, this lady. But what she can do is, right, b'diavad, if she married a Kohen, we don't tell them to get divorced. Because b'diavad, after all, she's a kosher Jew, So lechatchila, we tell her, don't get married with a Kohen. If she did it, behind our backs, we can just leave them like that. It's okay. No big deal. It's not the end of the world. That's the way it works with the issue of mamzerut. So as we said, right, that this is what happens when a person is half Jewish from the mother's side. But what about from the father's side? As we said, right, the father's side, he's totally a goy. If the father is a Jew and the mother is a goya, why is that? By the way, why is he a goy? What's the reason why? Because he was nurtured. He grew. He was born. He was nurtured in the stomach of the goya. So therefore, he's a total goy. It goes according to the mother. But here's the interesting thing, that when it comes to the yichus of the Jewish people, it goes according to the mother. But when it comes to the yichus of the goyim, right? The yichus of the goyim, it goes according to the father. You know that, right? So what does that mean? let's say two goyim get married, right? And one of them is Edomi, father is Edomi, Esav, from Esav. The mother is Yevanit, right? Greek. Yeah. So what's the child? Is he Edomi or is he Yevani? He's Edomi because it goes according to the father. That's the way it is, So when it comes to the yichus of the goyim, it goes according to the father. When it comes to the yichus of the Jewish people, right? Jewishness it goes according to the mother. That's the way it is. So a little bit different. What about the issue of shvatim, right? Also shevet. Okay, let's say like it says about Mordechai, right? Tzaddik. Mordechai Tzaddik. They say that his father was from Binyamin, and his mother was from Yehuda. That's why he calls him Mordechai Yehudi. Because he was from Yehuda, from his mother's side. So the question is, when your mother is from Yehuda, and your father is from Binyamin, what are you? Are you Binyamin or are you Yehuda? Or half and half, 50-50?
Half and half.
50-50. No, it can't be half 50-50. Either it's one or the other, right? There's no 50-50 when it comes to things. So here, with the Shvatim, we also go according to the father. So we say, right, that if the father was from Shevet Binyamin, the mother was from Shevet Yehuda, the son is considered to be from Shevet Binyamin. This is the way it is, Same thing when it comes to Levi and Kohen, right? Everything goes according to the father. If the father is Kohen and the mother is a Levi'ah, so the son is a Kohen, right? But what about if the mother is a Kohenet? She's a Kohenet, but the father is Levi. So then the son is Levi. And that's the way it is. These things go according to the father. That's the way it is, So there's every issue in halakha regarding yichus, right? Has a different halakha. Everything has a different system, So that's the way it works. So as we said, right, that the one who was born from a union like this is pagum. He's damaged by that. There's also another one who's called pagum. You know who that is? In the Shulchan Aruch, a person who's ben Nidda. So what does that mean? Her mother didn't go to the mikveh. You know what I mean? And he was born like this, without mikveh. So he's called ben Nidda, right? You know what it says about this? It says in the Gemara that there's two people who are azpanim. If you see a person who azpanim, either he's a ben Nidda or he's a mamzer, one or the other. Azpanim the geinam. Right? That's the way it is. So the question is, what about ben Nidda? Is he allowed to marry a regular girl who's not a bat Nidda? Are they allowed to marry together? So the truth is, there's a big question about this in the halakha, in the poskim, about this. Because it says in the Shulchan Aruch that says that even though you're allowed to marry somebody who's a ben Nidda or a bat Nidda, but it says in Shulchan Aruch, not a good idea, not recommended. If you want to have a good life, don't marry a ben Nidda, bat Nidda. Why is that? Because since their neshama is damaged, they're pagum, they're damaged in the neshama, so therefore they're going to have a bad midot, It's going to be hard to deal with them. Difficult, difficult, headache. You want to have a headache? Marry one of those people. They give you a headache every day. Why? Because the midot are not good. They're not gentle, they're not subtle, they're not respectful, so much. They're chatzuf, chutzpah, az panim legeinam. That's exactly what it says, right? So therefore, it says in Shulchan Aruch that a person should refrain, not has to, it's not halakha, but recommended he should refrain from buying a ben Nidda or bat Nidda. By the way, regarding this, it's an amazing thing. That it says in the Zohar Kadosh, regarding this, that Avraham Avinu, you know what it says, right? Avraham Avinu, he was a ben Nidda. That's what it says, right? So what does that mean? It says his mother, who was the wife of Terach, right? She didn't go to the mikveh, So she was menstruating at that time when she got pregnant with Abraham. So therefore, Avraham Avinu was a ben Nidda. That's what it says. So what are you going to tell me about that? What, Avraham Avinu was pagum? Yes, he was pagum. But what happened was that because of the great teshuvah that he did, the great aliyot that he made in the ruchaniyut, he was able to overcome all his damage, the damage that he was done. That's what it was. So Avraham Avinu was the first one, the first ger, the first convert. He overcame everything. And even though he came from bad roots, his father was Avodah Zarah, So this is the way it was. So nevertheless, he overcame everything. So says the Zohar Kadosh something amazing. Avraham Avinu was not just a regular tzaddik, right? He was able to mekarev a lot of people, to megar them. He was converting people everywhere where he went. People would be converting to Judaism because of him, converting them into Yirat Shamayim, under the wings of the Shekhinah. Avraham Avinu was converting them like this. He was making them Yirat Shamayim. So what's the reason why Avraham Avinu has such a big power like this? To convert people, to bring them under the wings of the Shekhinah. Why dafka him? So you know what it says, right? The Zohar Kadosh says that dafka he had the power to do that. You know why? Because he was a ben Nidda, a person who's a ben Nidda but is able to overcome his deficiencies, his damage that he has in the neshama, he becomes even more kadosh than a person who wasn't born a ben Nidda. So what does that mean? He's able to bring people in, to makar people. He has a big talent for that. They give him a special talent for doing kiruv. Because he was a ben Nidda and he overcame it, overpowered it. So they give him a matana, they give him a gift. This is what happens. So therefore he has a gift, he's gifted to bring people close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to megar them, to bring them into teshuvah, to bring them under the wings of the Shekhinah. That's what Avraham Avinu was. So therefore, right, a person was able to overcome his Nidda status, even though his mother wasn't religious, he can still become like Avraham Avinu. Like the Rambam says the Rambam, any Jew, says the Rambam like this. Listen to this. Says the Rambam, any Jew can grow and become like Avraham Avinu. Doesn't matter who he is. Any Jew. So a person should never say, I can't go up in Ruchaniyut, I can't be a Gadol. Yes, you can. You can be Gadol Ador. You can be like Avraham Avinu. No less than that. That's what it says in the Rambam. Some people think, by the way, there's one rabbi I heard from Canada. They told me, he said, I'll never be like Avraham Avinu. Yeah, he could be if you want. That's what it says in the Rambam. You should have looked at the Rambam. The Rambam says you can be like Avraham Avinu. That's what it says. So therefore, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Abba Shalom, he has a tshuva on this also. And he got Moshe. They asked him over there was a yeshiva bacher, a guy who was going to yeshiva, and he wanted to marry a girl. So what happened was that the girl was a bat niddah. Her parents are not religious. Her mother doesn't go to the mikveh. So they asked him a question, Rabbi, are we allowed to marry this lady? He's a ben Torah, this guy. He's learning in yeshiva. Is he allowed to marry a girl who's a bat niddah? It says in Shulchan Aruch, not recommended to do this. So Moshe Feinstein said like this, look at her, he says what she is. If she did tshuva, and she went to Bet Yaakov, and she learned in seminary, and she became a good girl, she became like a yeshivish girl, a real Bat Yisrael, right? Like the way it's supposed to be. So it says Moshe Feinstein, if you see that she behaves well, and she's religious, with good midot and everything, even though her mother was not going to mikveh, you can still marry her, it says no problem. So you see from there, same thing, same concept. That what? That if a person overcame that damage that he has from the neshama, from being a ben niddah, he can still become, a great person, and be in the greatest heights of the Torah, greatest heights of the kedusha. That's the way it is, So therefore, the rule is that if a person wants to marry somebody like that, as long as he sees that that person behaves properly, and Yirat Shamayim, Yirat Shamayim is the most important thing, number one, right? Number one thing is Yirat Shamayim. So therefore, if you see that he's Yirat Shamayim or she's Yirat Shamayim, you can marry her, even though she's a bat niddah. But if a person wants to be machmir, I understand, but sometimes being machmir in these cases is not so good, because sometimes that could be she was your bat zug, and you didn't go for her, so you never know, right? That could be a big loss. If she's a good girl and she's a yeshiva girl, she's a Bet Yaakov girl, why would you want to reject her? Because it says Rav Moshe Feinstein, by the way, something funny. He says that you never know, by the way, with these ladies. Even though her mother wasn't religious, she didn't go to the mikveh. He says maybe, look what he says. Maybe she went to the beach, and she went into the water, just to swim, and because of that she got purified, and it could be that this child is not a ben niddah. You never know. It could be not such a great chance, but okay, you never know. So you can't say for sure, that person is a ben niddah. You don't know. Only the Zohar Kadosh can say. Why? Because they had Ruach HaKodesh, the Chachamim, Zohar Kadosh, they had Ruach HaKodesh. So they knew Avraham Avinu was a ben niddah. How do we know? We know somebody who's a ben niddah? We don't really know. But you know what the sign is, right? The sign is if you see that he behaves poorly, bad midot, chutzpah, azpanim, then you know that something is wrong over there. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, If you see somebody who has bad midot, he fights with everybody, all the time fighting with people, can't get along, screaming, yelling, shouting, blah, blah, no respect, no derech eretz. There's a chashash that something is wrong with his lineage. That's what it says. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen.